So I have 10:01. Why don't we go ahead and call the annual meeting of the Wethersfield School District to order? And I believe we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Okay. It is my understanding that the principal is presenting the annual service award. When we go ahead and do that.
Yes, thank you very much. So this year, the Wethersfield School would like to award the Wethersfield Service Award to the families in our community. Over the last 2 years, the role of the family in schools has increased tremendously. When schools closed in March of 2020, families were catapulted into the forefront of education and were suddenly asked to adjust their lives to ensure that their children would still get a quality education. Suddenly, the dining room table became your child's classroom. The classroom teacher and all the students were virtually sitting around it. Lots of families had to adjust their work schedules, brush up on math facts, and learn how to Zoom into a meeting so that there was some sense of normality for all of us. Then, as we thought that we were getting ahead of this pandemic and had hopes of going back to a quote-unquote normal school day, we adjusted the schedule to a shortened day and changed a simple thing like how you pick up your kids from school. Social distancing became the new phrase, and everyone wore a mask to keep each other safe. The numerous phone calls and emails we received about quarantining, test to stay, and now test at home were all well received. We asked you all to do so much during this pandemic, and we just want you to know how much we appreciated you for all your help and support. With appreciation from the Wethersfield school staff. Thank you very much, parents, for everything that you have done. We appreciate you.
Thank you. As a parent of a Wethersfield school kid, I can tell you it has been a challenge for the past year, but we're doing the best we can, and certainly you guys are as well. So thank you. So there are a couple of things. We are in a hybrid setting, so there seems like there's some folks in the school, and then we have a handful of folks online as well. So if there are questions throughout any of the presentations or discussion of the articles, we're going to do the best we can to capture everybody, but it might take us a minute, especially for those who, because we have this hybrid setting. So if you can raise your hand if you're online, we'll do the best. We're gonna do the best we can. And without any further, we'll go ahead and read the warning. So this is: the legal voters of the Wethersfield School District, Wethersfield, Vermont, are hereby notified and warned to meet in person at the Wethersfield School in Ascutney, town of Wethersfield, Vermont, or virtually on Saturday, February 26th, 2022 at 10:00 a.m. in the morning to transact any business not involving voting by Australian ballot or any voting required by law to be by ballot. Such meeting, so started, shall be adjourned to Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. The legal voters of the Wethersfield School District are further notified and warned to meet at the Martin Memorial Hall in Ascutney, Vermont on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon to act on any business involving voting by Australian ballot or any voting required by law to be by ballot. Polls open at 10:00 in the morning and close at 7:00 in the evening. That is the introduction. Without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce the school board chair, Anne Marie.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Redmond. I'm the chair of the Wethersfield School Board. I'd also like to introduce Mark Youngling. I don't know how I was going to do that. He is the vice chair, Kristen Russo, Jackie Antonovich, and Jamie Turner. Also, from the rest of the administration, we have David Baker, superintendent, on the call, Larry Dower, the CIO, Chief Information Officer, and Ed Connors, the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. For Wethersfield School, we have our principal, Brian Martis. He also likes to be called lead learner. And BJFC, who do our everything. We also have a special guest today, John Arison, State Representative. If I'll hand the meeting back to you.
Great. Thanks, Anne-Marie. So just a quick note, there are 3 non-residents who will be speaking throughout the course of the meeting: David Baker, Larry Dower, and Ed Connors. With no objections, we will allow them to speak. Okay. And it's my understanding that John Arison would like to make a few comments prior to getting into the meeting.
Thank you. I noticed you said a few comments. I'll try to make it a few. As some of you may know that I ran for legislature last year. This will be my second year in the House. And I was assigned to the Education Committee, which was an eye-opener for me, and because it wasn't in my wheelhouse. It's been a steep learning curve. I hope I've performed well. But anyway, let me give you some of the highlights of this year. Needless to say, emphasis has been on the same thing that the school has been addressing, and that's COVID concerns. The good news, of course, is that there's been adequate money to address all the concerns. We're very fortunate in Weathersfield being a mostly new school with good systems, but a lot of the schools in the state don't have that same advantage. Anybody that listened to the governor's State of the State address, a major emphasis this year has been workforce development. That involves every parent and every student. Vermont is, if you drive any of the roads or on any of the businesses, you'll see the help wanted signs everywhere. If we don't work diligently to bring our students into an educated workforce, that's going to continue. I've talked to Principal Martis about this. I'd like to emphasize to all the parents, and especially the 7th and middle school kids, that when you're entering high school, either most kids are going to Windsor, some are scattered around with another emphasis in Springfield. There's 2 facilities that are available to within our geographic area, the career technical centers. Please take the time to explore the technical centers. They are amazing facilities. They offer, people tend to think that the technical centers are emphasis, you're going to grow up to be a carpenter or a plumber, and it's not that at all. They have machine shops, they have audio visual, they have robotics. Take the time, take your students, do a tour. And I'd also like to add that if you go to Windsor, if you choose the Career Technical Center path, you'll go to Hartford. Some of your time is going to be spent on a school bus going back and forth, and you may have problems with your scheduling to get your classwork done in Windsor and your technical education in Hartford. Springfield, if you go to Springfield High School, you would dovetail those activities a lot closer together. Another emphasis that in committee that we've been hearing about is with updates is how are the students doing? It was a little alarming. I believe that Weathersfield has been talking to Principal Martis. It hasn't been an issue. But some of the remote learning after effects, or current effects, I should say, have been student behavior. The legislature really doesn't have a way to handle that. But I got to tell you, it was really alarming. I sit right next to a high school teacher from Colchester, and I was absolutely appalled. I'll give you an example. She said at Colchester High School, they closed all the boys' bathrooms except for one, and the principal has to stand there because the kids, I don't know, TikTok or something. It just, I don't know why we've gone down this rabbit hole of behavior. And I'm very happy that Weathersfield School isn't suffering from some after effects that other schools are. I got some good news and I got some bad news. What do you want to hear first? I'll start with the good news. The education fund ended last year with a $90 million surplus. That's a lot of money, but when you put it into the big perspective, the total education budget is $2.2 billion. So in percentage wise, it's still a good chunk of money, but it's not our savior. The current train of thought, and this came from the governor, and I think it's got support in the legislature, is to put 45 million of that into property tax relief. The other 45 million has yet to be decided. There's some emphasis into putting it into a seed money for school construction. Once again, Weathersfield is very fortunate. We got in on the tail end of state percentage, 30% paid for by the state. Shortly after we got done, and they finally got done paying us, the program has been on a hiatus since 2016. In the meantime, a lot of schools in Vermont have continued to deteriorate. They haven't had success getting bond votes passed to upgrade the schools. So last session, a school assessment bill was passed. This one really got me. The Agency of Education, the Agency of Education couldn't even tell us how many school buildings there were in the state. The bill had two components. One was an inventory, so at least we knew exactly where every school was, every independent school. The second part of it was an assessment of every one of the buildings. I believe you guys have gone through the first part where they just come down and see where you are, put it on a GIS so it can be an accurate map and know where all the buildings are. The second part will be an assessment, and the purpose of the assessment is so that when funding in the legislature comes up with a plan to add the state component of the funding, that we know the buildings that are in the worst conditions and we can focus them on it. The bad news is, Dr. Baker knows about this one, is the weighting factors study that came out last year. And it's the result of partly from Act 173. The old system, when Act 46 went in and the schools were consolidated, weighting factors were assigned to students. You think, wow, we got 210 students here. I'm off a little bit. But when the state gets done with their math, you may have 190 students, you may have 250, and that's how the state funding is calculated. And the weighting factors did not accurately reflect the actual cost to bring all students to the same level. It was back in the, I don't remember the date, it was the Brigham decision that the Vermont Constitution requires all students be given an equal education because the weighting factors were not on par to give every school the same opportunities financially. Those factors are going to be recalculated. The numbers are out. They're, in some regards, I'm glad in education, we deal less with the numbers and more in policy. So appropriations committee is looking at that pretty extensively. I can't tell you definitively if Weathersfield is going to be on the receiving end or the giving end. My gut feeling is because we do a pretty good job here, and the community demographics are not everybody, but the overall the demographics of Weathersfield are a little higher than some other areas of the state. So my gut feeling is that we're going to be on the losing end. In other words, property taxes may go up again. I did notice that the local share of education tax is down a little bit this year, but keep in mind that a lot of that is because the penalty factor was removed for 2 years. So in 2 years, that may or may not continue to be removed. Another important, and this one predated me being in Montclair, was Act 73, which was Act 73 was about special ed and how that was financed. And that's another very big component that the SU takes care of for us and for all the schools in Vermont. The SUs handle the special ed cost. So those are being looked at. The Education Committee, once again, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about problems in other areas of the state, but when Act 46 which we got through pretty easily, if you will. If you look at our supervisory union, there is a component which is a unified district, which is West Windsor and Windsor, but a lot of areas of the state, many towns were lumped together and called a unified district. One school board, one budget. When they, an example is one of the districts up in Addison County is 6 small towns with 1 central high school, 6 small schools with very small enrollments. And then when the unified school district says, we're going to close you because it's economically not feasible to keep you open, needless to say, the people in the town, if it happened to us, we'd have the same reaction. No, we're not going to do it. Anyway, we've spent an enormous amount of time this year, and I got to tell you, it's not exciting work, trying to put together wordage that will allow towns to pull out of their SU and still be able to provide the services that the supervisory unit district provide. And that's a tough road to hoe. I'll give you an example. The town of Ripton has a small school with under 60 kids. The town overwhelmingly voted to withdraw from the supervisory union, and they didn't even have a plan on how they were going to provide the services that their SU that they were part of provided. So anyway, that we've spent a lot of time on that. I think I'll wrap that up right about now. I'll have quite a bit more on the town report, but from the education standpoint, I'll turn it back to the folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. So without anything else, I think we'll go ahead and jump into Article 1. Article 1 is to approve the reports of the school district officers for the period from July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. Entertain a motion to approve Article 1.
There are no floor votes, John. I don't think.
Sorry, you're right. My mistake.
Yeah,
So-
just questions, John, that's all.
Yeah, sorry.
And then we'll vote on Tuesday.
Yep. Any questions on Article 1? Okay, we'll move on to Article 2. To see if the school district will vote to authorize the school board to borrow money in anticipation of taxes to meet the requirements of the school district for the ensuing year, and to authorize the execution and delivery of notes or orders to the school district. Questions on Article 2? If there's none at the school, I don't see any hands, so we'll move to Article 3. To elect all school district officers as required by law. Again, hands if you're online, or if somebody at the school could let me know if there's questions. Hearing and seeing none, we'll go to Article 4. Shall the voters of the Wethersfield School District approve the school board to expend $6,964,373, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in the education spending of $20,998.74 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 2.29% higher than the spending for the current year. And I believe we have a presentation on Article 4.
That's correct. I'm going to hand it over for the beginning part to Principal Martis.
Thank you. So we want to go over a few things. First off is how we meet the needs of our students and our families here at Wethersfield. So first off, we do have special education for kids who qualify for an IEP, an individualized education plan. We also are working with kids that are not served through IEPs to make sure that they're getting the social emotional support that they have. So we have an outside agency we contract with them called We Are Hope, and it gives kids daily time to talk to a coach. And so every day they go to a coach for about 30 minutes and have an opportunity to talk through, and then we cycle through that program. And usually it's about a 6-week program for students to be able to participate in that. We're also offering advanced 8th grade math students can access high school algebra. So we partner with Windsor School, and we have math students in 8th grade that go over to Windsor in the morning to be able to get algebra classes. We have an amazing expanded food program here at school. Every student that's in person here, that's here at school, gets to eat breakfast and lunch for free. We also provide our Hicks-Nichols grant program. We have PTO funding. We have an amazing PTO here, right, that does amazing things at school. We have Rise Amplify, and which we just got another grant for them as well, and then other grants of different opportunities to bring things here to the school at no cost to our taxpayers. 4 Winds, which is a nature-based curriculum, which I have not been able to experience yet, but I'm looking forward to resuming that after we get out of these crazy COVID times. And then we have Pause, which is our after-school program. It's not a school-funded program, but it serves families and shares our facility to offer after-school care, a guided after-school care, which helps out with homework and other such areas. Safe and Healthy School, been following the COVID guidelines. And then we also have high attendance by our students, staff, and our teachers. All right, so what's new this year? So despite the pandemic, we've been able to do lots of new and amazing things here at school. So one of the things that we've done across not only Wethersfield, but across the SU is we've implemented Leader in Me. So I'm sure your kids have talked a little bit about Leader in Me. It's about being proactive, sharpening the saw, synergize. It's a great opportunity for students to have their voice and become leaders within the school. We've also had students this year presenting at school board meetings. We just had last month, we had our 8th graders presenting their project on the t-shirt design and doing spirit wear. We had kids that presented a 7th grade project about the community building a nature center, and they also presented to the select board. And then we even had a student present about the last dairy farmer here in Wethersfield as well. We've given students lots of opportunities for voice and choice. I've been meeting with some students. They've been working on our vision, mission, and core values here at school, as well as just having an opportunity to share what they value about our school. It was a fun meeting the other day to be able to work with our students with that. We've been starting our makerspace. So makerspace getting us into that 21st century to be able to have kids have those opportunity for some of those other non-traditional school type of things. We've been talking about solar energy and the benefits that it's had here at school. We even got to name a state snowplow, Big Bessie. I don't know if you've been able to see Big Bessie. That was a lot of fun. Something I never thought I'd do up there in the picture. I was in Big Bessie, never thought I'd be in a snowplow. But our kids are excited, and then every time they see it drive by, I get lots of reports from our students saying, hey, Big Bessie was here. They cleared our roads to get to school, so it's been a lot of fun. And then one of our grandfathers from some of our students here is actually the one that gets to drive Big Bessie. Vaccination clinics. So we've had several vaccination clinics here at school. We've had 2 most recently with the help and the support of the Scutney Volunteer Fire Department. Thank you, Chief Spalding, for that. And then also with Rescue Inc. And then we had 2 that were put on by the state. We're having a 3rd one because we've had so much call for students and families, and it's open up to everybody. It's a mobile type clinic where they do all the work. They pull up in the parking lot, and they're able just to be very self-sufficient. They just need our parking lot, and then we're here, Chief Spalding, BJ, and I get to be here to make sure that we're supporting them. We've done test to stay kids at school and now take-home tests so that kids can stay in school. We've been able to start bringing back families for sporting events, which has been amazing. Just got to go see kindergarten and 1st grade practicing basketball right before this event, and to see the families out there and the smiles on everybody's face as they're playing basketball. Again, breakfast and lunch is free to all students. We're planning a theatrical event in the springtime. So we're trying to come together to get our students to be able to be on stage and show off some of their talents. And then we've had a community dinner back on December 14th, and we're planning another one for the spring, where it was literally a drive-through type program, because I come from the world where there's drive-through food, quite a bit of it. And then, but be able to have a little bit of that here and have families, and it was free to our families to have that. And then, so here's some sources of fundings for our school: local taxes, of course, state of Vermont Educational Fund, federal government grants, private grants, like I mentioned before, Hicks Nichols. We've gotten some grants from Walmart as well, the Byrne Foundation and the Rise Amplify, our PTO again, then generous donations from teachers, staff, parents, community, and organizations. And then we've had tons of volunteers in non-COVID years. We keep getting those calls of when families can come back and volunteer. And then some of our goals that we've set up for this year, for our FY23 budget, is of course to maintain our low amount of student to staff ratio, which is great. So it supports the whole child intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically, to meet the Vermont education quality standards set by the State Board of Education. Also to retain the trust of the voters by bringing forth a responsible budget. And then one of the things that we were trying to plan on this year is to return a foreign language program to our curriculum. And then we're adding full-time paraprofessionals back to add for some additional classroom support. And these are our projected numbers. We have currently 238 students. And so our projected numbers for next year are 240. So never know about that kindergarten for sure, but 25 plus. And then based on information that we've had, anywhere from 32 students down to 18, depending on the grade level. So that of course will depend on the class sizes, which is great. And then here is our set of enrollment over the last few years. So 240, like I said, is projected for next year. Currently we have 238. Last year we had 217, and then it's fluctuated a little bit between 234. And then with high school students, we have 344. All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Take those as his Sarah and Redmond talking. We have some shared expenses across the SU. Sharing some of these significant services across the SU helped us to avoid a forced merger under Act 46. It also helps to save some money by achieving an economy of scale for our payroll, IT, HR, special education, maintenance, and curriculum programs. It also helps us to buffer budgetary impacts of students moving into and out of the district, especially in the special education, and balances some loss of direct local control with benefits of savings and shared risk. There's also the food service program that we share with the SU, and transportation. For FY23, the SU projected assessments, you can see here, we're going to be up slightly from last year, not quite as much as we were up last year. Now we'll move on to what everybody's concerned about, which is the impact of our budget on your taxes. The current tax rate is $1.95. The projected new tax rate is $84.69. That's a decrease of 10 cents. So kind of put that in terms that are more understandable. If you have a home valued at $100,000, you would see a tax decrease of $101. A home valued at $250,000 will see a decrease in their taxes of $253. And a home valued at $500,000 will see a decrease of $507. The next slide shows some of the different things that are in the budget: wages, benefits. Those, of course, went up a bit because, of course, cost of living has gone up. We also need to maintain our staff and teachers, and it's very difficult employment sort of situation that we're in. With there aren't a whole lot of people that need work right now, so we need to be as attractive as we can to new hires. Contracted services went up because we are we want to retain the We Are Hope program. We feel like it's really helping our students, especially during these times. And we want to keep those services. Those have been being paid more through the ESSER funds and through the SU. So we don't want to lose them when the ESSER funds end. So we wanted to budget for keeping that. I guess we can just kind of look through there and see different things. There's not an issue with tuition this year as there was last year. I guess that sort of, comes and goes depending on how many students we have in the high school level. And luckily that sort of kept steady this year, so we don't have an issue with that. And I guess if anyone has any questions on that, we can save those for the end, but I'm sure we'll be back to that. The next slide is the FY23 projected high school tuition students. So for FY22, we had $2,011,647, and for FY23, we're projecting, based on slightly increased costs coming to us from the various schools that we send to, a total of $2,133,407. And the high school enrollment fluctuates based on students moving into another district. Before we take questions, I would like to just take a moment to thank one of our outgoing board members for her service. Kristen Russo is leaving us after, how many years did you on the board? 3 years? And we'd like to present you with this certificate. We'll get signed after. Certificate, and also a gift certificate to the Inlet Wethersfield. So thank you for this. And now we'll take questions.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. There was one question from online, Michelle Pinders.
I have a question for you regarding student teacher ratio for next year. Is third grade going to be combined, or are they going to hire an additional third grade teacher?
I'll let Brian take that.
We are looking at that right now as far as what we have for numbers for next year. And we do anticipate that we have some growth. So it'll just depend exactly where that is and how we're going to use that. So,
okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Are there other questions from folks online before we go to questions from folks in the audience? Okay, if there are questions from the people in the school. Dude, are there, unless I'm missing any, we have one other additional question online. Is there anybody else in the school who has any questions on the presentations? No?
No.
Okay, Paul Tillman. Paul, if you have a question, go ahead. You're muted, just as an FYI. Well, we'll come back to.
You're not sure how to unmute the type
Yeah,
of
I'm not.
question.
Paul, if you can't unmute, you could type your question into the chat function. We'll come back to Paul, I suppose, if they figure it out. Oh, there we go. We have a question in the chat from Paul Tillman, was wondering about the 125% transportation increase. Somebody could take that one.
Yeah, that is because we have added transportation for sports back into the budget. That was something that was cut last year, and that we really feel helps out the parents. And so we added it back in. It seems like a large amount, but really since the budget for transportation was only what, 4,000, adding 5,000 in for the buses for athletics makes it seem like a huge jump, but not actually that much additional dollars.
Other questions on or discussion on Article 4?
We have someone in the audience?
Mayor Kelly, the wording of the actual article, is that statutory? Is that? Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Could somebody repeat that question?
Is the wording of Article 4 statutory?
Yes, it is. That was done about 5 or 6 years ago, and it has to be worded almost exactly like that.
So even though taxes are going down, you have to.
That's
in
why
that
I
way.
brought it up. If you could reiterate that point, that it's the spending per pupil is going up, but taxes are going down.
Yeah. And that's because finally, the equalized pupil numbers have sort of gone in our favor this year. We have had a couple of years with lower student enrollment, and those sort of kept the amount, because it's actually the year before that the state uses, so those amounts were keeping our equalized pupil numbers down, even though we had more pupils in the building. This year, I think it's pretty much right on. And the amount that they're giving us for equalized pupil is actually the amount of students that we have in the building this year. So it worked out much better for us this year.
Okay. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Paul, I can't tell if that's a new hand raised, Paul Tillman, or if that's the original question about transportation costs. If you have another question, feel free to chime in or type it in the chat. And I don't see any others online, and hearing none from the school. I think, okay, great. No more questions from Paul. Thanks. We can go ahead and move to Article 5. This is to transact any other business which may properly come before the meeting.
You have a hand up, Mr. Dave Fuller.
Hi, John. I have 2 comments. First, I'd like to thank my daughter. She's the 3rd generation in our family for public service. The 4th one is sitting right over here. Second point I'd like to make is, obviously the last 2 years have been very difficult through COVID for all of us. I'd like to point out to the board and to the SU board about COVID-19 restrictions. I know you guys have had some discussions about them, but I'd like to point out something to do with the data that's being collected. I struggled myself with whether I wanted to get vaccinated. So I talked with my family and finally I did. I don't mind admitting that. But I also served the town as emergency management and as a select board. And our town manager's here as well, Brandon Gilman. Not one case in 2 years of positive COVID has been reported to us at the town. That information is still viewed to be private information, and it goes up to the State Department of Health. And we fully respect that. But here's the problem of collecting data, and the trailers are outside and doing the same thing because it happened to me. Weathersfield is unique. We have 5 zip codes. And even though you may live in town, your address may be in Reading, zip code, Windsor, zip code, Springfield, zip code, some other associated address where you will be. So I don't know how to go about this, but I want to make everybody aware of, if Weathersfield is on the state health website, it says that we are extremely under-vaccinated or whatever the criteria they're using. That's because the addresses are associated with the zip codes. I don't know how you can correct that or make any other informed decisions. I'd just like to point that out because we've struggled with that We're gonna do the same thing when we get into broadband as well, because the addresses and the locations in town. That's my comment. I don't have, there's no easy answer for this, to how to face these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We are sort of, I mean, I don't want to speak for the entire SU, but we are sort of moving a bit away from using vaccination rates as a basis for our decisions anyway. Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments or discussion for the 2022 Weathersfield Annual School Meeting? I see none online, and doesn't look like anybody's moving in the audience from what I can tell. So hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn the annual school meeting.
Yeah, John, this is David Baker. I don't know, and I know that David Fuller's in the audience too. He may have a different take on this, but I don't think we need a formal motion to adjourn, because what we're going to really do is just suspend this meeting until March 1st, which is the continuation for the Australian ballot voting, and the polls. The polls are warned in the warning. They open at 10 a.m., close at 7 p.m. So I think that's probably the correct protocol, John.
Is this suspend? Sure. Okay, that's fair. We'll suspend the meeting until voting on, as David said, which will be March 1st, Tuesday, March 1st, beginning at 10 at Martin Memorial Hall.